And I believe we're live. Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, beautiful people. Welcome to another episode of Kiko's Freethinkers Forum. This is episode 125. This is officially the start of season 3 of the show. And I had to bring on a guest that's been on the show several times before to commemorate our 2 years that we've had together, learning together, growing together. And look at who we have in the house. We have Mr. Geopolitics himself, S.L. Kanthan. He's based out of Bangalore, India. Congratulations to him. He recently has a new show on YouTube entitled Geopolitics Demystified. You can follow him at Kanthan2030 on X, which was Twitter, formerly known as Twitter. And he's been on the show a lot of different times. He's a columnist, writes for Sputnik India. We're going to discuss one of his articles today entitled How the American Century Will Come to an End, which is quite appropriate considering the times that we're in today, not only from the geopolitical landscape, but just also the question of the unknown. What's going to be the next big story that releases, and how are people going to react to these different stories coming in here and there, all the information overload. We will discuss all this stuff later. But I just want to say welcome to the show, SL, and I can't wait to have this great discussion.
Thank you so much, Kiko. It's always a pleasure to join you and your audience.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Couldn't have asked for anyone else to come onto the show. I had a couple of people in mind, but I was like, you know what? This would be a great way for SL and I to reconnect because it's been a while since we talked. And having said that, I think an appropriate point of start should be more or less the BRICS situation, because we're surely going to talk about the U.S. political circus as it is. But I want the audience to kind of, I guess, get your take on this anticipation of the BRICS meeting that's going to be taking place in Kazan, Russia in October of this year. What can people expect from that BRICS conference?
So which one? I'm sorry. I kind of got distracted there. Sorry.
No, you're good. I was talking about the upcoming BRICS meeting in Kazan, Russia. What can the audience expect to come out of that meeting?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's going to be a game changer. A little bit less than so, because about 40 countries wanted to join BRICS. Right? They're all ready to embrace this new paradigm of a multipolar world. However, there's been some countries, so BRICS was 5 for a long time, and then 5 new members. They started at the beginning of this year, so you can call it BRICS Plus. So it has 10 members now, and 40 more members, 40 more countries want to join BRICS Plus. But some of these current members, including India, I believe, it's kind of hesitant to let so many people come in. So I'm not sure if a lot of new members will be allowed this year. But regardless, they're going to possibly make some huge announcements regarding things like basically about de-dollarization. So one of them is going to be the grain exchange system, where countries will be able to sell wheat, rice, corn, soy, etc., to each other in their local currencies. So and then the pricing will also be done not in US dollar, but maybe like in a basket of currencies. So that'll be huge. And Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, he went to Russia right after he got elected the third time. And so the Russia-India relations is really booming. And that's really making the Washington, D.C. elites very mad. And also today, India and China seem to be warming up. So the 2 foreign ministers of India and China met at the ASEAN meeting, which was conducted in Laos, the country of Laos. So they both met for like an hour and a half or so. So, people understand that we need to go away from this perpetual wars. We need to go away from fighting one another, killing one another, and we need to start focusing on peace, development, infrastructure, focusing on the people, making each country more prosperous. And that can happen only if you make the people more prosperous, right? Like the whole population. You cannot just make 5% of the country rich and leave 95% behind. And so, to be honest, I think that the US should join the BRICS, or, I mean, at least philosophically, it should work with the multilateral organizations like BRICS, because the US cannot be the policeman of the world. It cannot be constantly engaged in wars, just one after another. The US needs to focus on Americans. The US needs to focus on the American infrastructure, the American economy, the American blue collar workers, the American middle class, how to reduce the cost of healthcare, how to reduce the cost of education. People should be able to graduate from college without debt. Okay, what is the
Mhm.
point in being the richest country on earth when your people are just burdened with debt? You have homeless people everywhere, drug addiction. 100,000 Americans die every year from the overdose. Blah blah blah. There are so many problems. So, well, every country should focus on taking care of their own people and working with everyone else in promoting common prosperity.
I must say, SL, that comment you made, and my eyes lit up a little bit when you said that the U.S. that they should consider joining the BRICS Plus. I don't know if you meant that in a philosophical way or just like a morally driven type way, but that wouldn't make any sense at all, considering that isn't the BRICS formed in response to the U.S. dollar and to the hegemony of the U.S. dollar? So that wouldn't make any sense. The U.S. would never join the BRICS Plus. They wouldn't even be
Well,
allowed to join, right?
probably not. But if they change, right? I mean, the BRICS countries are not well, inherently opposed to the US. It's like Jesus said, um, hate the sin and not the sinner. you know so so if the US comes to BRICS and proposes a brand new architecture, security architecture, and it says we're going to stop the war against Russia, we're going to give Palestinians the state, and we're going to uh, stop building military bases in South China Sea, in the Philippines and Taiwan. So like if they come up with and if they say we're not going, you know, we're going to like remove 75% of the sanctions. you know, I was just reading an article in Washington Post, and it said 60% of the low income countries in the world are under US sanctions.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just madness. So if the US says, hey guys, we have a brand new approach, we found Jesus, we had this, the Enlightenment like a Buddha, and we understand this multipolar world, then the world will not mind having dollar, right? Why do they have to go recreate this whole new system if they could have a system that is not broken, where the US says we will never uh, weaponize the dollar, we will never weaponize the SWIFT system, we won't use sanctions, we'll stop wars, the unilateral wars. So if the US gives some guarantees like that, the world will be very happy to embrace wise, peaceful America.
Well, I know the people saw me grabbing something back here. I'm going to tell you what I was grabbing. That is a big if. That's a big if. I saw that movie with my kids at the theater last month or the month before. That's a huge if. And it kind of goes against everything you mentioned in the Sputnik article that you published on June the 30th this year about how the American century will come to an end. Everything that you said pretty much was opposite what you wrote in the article. I understand that you're not saying that. You're speaking in terms of, it will only take a little bit of grace and coordination from the US's part and NATO or whoever it is that's causing this multipolarity world not to, I guess, strengthen itself. And that kind of goes back to the very first episode we had together, episode 36, which you explained to my audience what multipolarity is. But that whole model is successful if there is coordination, but we clearly see that there's not coordination in certain parts of the world, which leads to a question that kind of overlaps what we just discussed in this first 10 minutes. How is the BRICS Plus sustainable if we have these constant perpetual wars? Like, how wouldn't that go against BRICS Plus strength? And how does that ensure that we don't have a World War III? Because to me, that's a conflicting message. How is there a possibility of World War III? So that almost admits that there's not peace going on as consistently as there needs to be for there to be the coexistence that we've discussed, the multipolarity, the BRICS Plus, worrying about the economies, the local currencies, and not so much the wars. But how do we balance that, the BRICS Plus versus this World War III threat?
Yeah, I mean, we're just living in a very, very dangerous and confusing times because people don't understand how close we are to a nuclear war, between Europe and Russia, NATO and Russia, US and Russia. And there's been like some of the Europeans are starting to wake up, and that's why we saw like the rise of, or the when the European Parliament, they had the election, there was a little bit of a shift to the far right. And in the French elections in the first round, the far right really won a lot. If you look at the French map, it's like Marine Le Pen's party, they had a sweep like all over France. And they won twice as many votes as Macron's party.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of frustration in Europe, and they're just like, but I mean, the EU is like a puppet of the military industrial complex, the Western banking corporate system. So they keep pushing as much as possible with the war against Russia. And if they send in the F-16s, if they send in the long-range missiles, it could be, it could be a nuclear war. Because if there is, like, say, the F-16 that leaves Poland and it's going towards Moscow, the Russian doctrine says they have to assume that this fighter jet has a nuclear bomb. Okay, they cannot just assume that it's a regular, the conventional bomb. So if it crosses into the Russian border, then the Russians have like 5 minutes to make up their mind if they want to launch a nuclear missile, right? And there's no, I mean, if a nuclear war starts, okay, there's no such thing as I will drop one nuclear bomb on Moscow and you drop one nuclear bomb on Washington, D.C., and then we call it even. No, it's not going to work like that. If you start one nukes, And then the following, there'll be like, 50 nukes dropping on Berlin, London, Moscow, New York City, San Francisco. People don't understand how serious these things are. People are so blasé about what is happening. And look at the Middle East. So Netanyahu came and gave a speech in with the U.S. Congress, the joint session, and all these senators and representatives clapping like monkeys, and
Mm-hmm.
they gave 58 standing ovations to
Mm-hmm.
the butcher of Gaza. It's unbelievable, and he wants more wars. He wants to draw in America into a war with Iran, you know. And there are all these Zionists, and they have these like fanatical dreams of the greater Israel, and they want to take over Lebanon, most of Syria, parts of Iraq, parts of uh, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And they have all these like crazy fantasies about what a greater Israel should look like. And they could start a war with Iran, and that would be like, you know, devastating. It's just
Well,
madness.
well, going to the point you just made, and that was going to be a bullet point that I had Netanyahu, the war criminal visits Congress with all those standing ovations, and look, we had Zelensky. He's been to D.C. in front of Congress, and now you got Netanyahu. Um, just a warm welcome, and unfortunately, if you go to APAC Tracker on X, APAC Tracker keeps a hold of all the accounts, all the money that's being sent to these politicians through the lobbies. APAC is just one of the Israeli lobbies that operates in DC. And I was listening to the RNC, the Republican National Convention, about 10 days ago. And I was listening to Trump's VP, JD Vance, and his speech. And I was encouraged by some of the economic stuff, but geopolitically, this is where I tell people, my audience and everyone else included, if you want to look at where both parties are pretty much in lockstep, look no further than geopolitics, which usually starts at the military. And once you see the military consistency, both parties agree that we need wars for the most part. Trump had some sort of departure in language in recent years when it came to the military industrial complex, but having JD Vance as a VP pick is troubling considering the comments he made about Iran. I mean, so to me, it's like you don't attack one boogeyman, but you're going to attack another one. And to me, that's what both parties do. One boogeyman is Russia, one boogeyman is Iran and China. But at the end of the day, it seems like both parties are compromised by Israel. Like Trump, I think he's gotten $1 million from AIPAC. Biden had up to like 5 times that amount, or maybe $8 million from AIPAC. I mean, just
Oh,
this ridiculous
sorry.
amount
I
of money.
mean, yeah, for Trump, there is this other big force, that is the Adelson family. He died. So, the Adelson guy, he gave like tens of millions of dollars to Trump in 2016. And now his wife is giving something like $100 million to Trump.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And that family is also they are citizens of Israel as well as the US. They have huge media control in Israel, and they own casinos in the US and a lot of businesses. So they work with APAC, so it's all just like one big family with just different names, APAC, ADL, Adelson, blah, blah, blah. But
Oh,
they're
yeah.
all well coordinated. So Trump is also compromised in that sense. And he's been very anti-Iran, and he has a little bit of the Islamophobia, you know. And like you said, he may make peace with Russia, but then he may start a catastrophic war in the Middle East. Okay, and that's going to kill millions of people and send tens of millions of refugees into Europe, and the US will be bogged down there for like another 20 years, wasting trillions and trillions of dollars. Why? You know, just just don't give any money and weapons to Israel, and force them into a two-state solution. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you want to send in like a multinational police team, military in the new Palestine to make sure that they don't threaten Israel, right? So we have to keep both of them happy, both of them secure, both of them peaceful, and then they'll get used to it over like the next 10, 15 years. So the US has to focus on diplomacy. As you said in my article, the American century is coming to an end. The US is not number one in manufacturing anymore. It's not number one in the exports. It's not number one in patents, scientific papers. It's not number one even in the military. Okay. Russia and China have the hypersonic missiles, but the US does not. The
Mm-hmm.
US cannot even defeat the Houthis now, in Yemen. That's very sad, right? I mean, the Yemenis, they don't even have like a proper country. They they're like very poor, dirt poor, but they get all these missiles, and they're the first one in the world to use the anti-ship ballistic missiles. Okay, they're so advanced, and the U.S. The aircraft carriers are so afraid to go in that region. The Eisenhower and all these aircraft carriers, they quietly left the Red Sea. Why don't you go in? Say, I am the greatest country on earth, America, and I control the blue sea all over the world. I will shut you down, Houthis. My GDP per capita is like 1,000 times larger than yours. But they can't do that. They're like shooting down the American drones. The American drones are like something like $10 million each, and the Houthis are shooting it down with like $10,000 missiles. Okay, and they have drones, anti-ship missiles. They have the unmanned boats, and they've already sunk so many ships. And their message is, as long as you keep harming the Palestinians in Gaza, we're going to shut down this route in the Red Sea. And that's causing the global economy like, I don't know, billions and billions and billions of dollars of loss. So what is the point? This is like 2024. Human civilization has been around for like 5,000, 6,000 years. We need to figure out how to stop wars. It's not really rocket science. And like if you remember, World War One was sold to the Americans as the war that would end all wars, right? That was Woodrow Wilson's propaganda. you know. So when he ran in 1916, his second term, he said, "I will keep America out of the war, the World War One." But as soon as he got into office, it took him only 1 month to declare joining World War One. So he
Mm-hmm.
fooled Americans, and then when the war ended, they said, "Oh, this is the war that ended all wars." Okay, what happened? It took only like from 1918 to 1939, about 21 years to start World War II. you know. And they said, oh, now, it's like the same story. I mean, it's like a drug addict, and he always promises you, oh, no, I mean, I won't do meth anymore. Okay, I'll do a little bit of cocaine. Okay, I'll do a little bit of fentanyl. you know, it's like the US needs like an intervention. And people don't even understand the dangers, the de-dollarization that is happening, and there will be huge repercussions in like less than 5 years. And China has the world's largest navy now. China can produce 270 ships for one ship that the US can produce. Okay. And I mean, look at Russia. Okay. Russia's production of the ammunition is larger than the US and Europe combined.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, because the US and Europe are being run by bankers, banksters, all these central banks, ECB, Fed, Wall Street, London, the big corporations. These are the people who are running Europe and America, and they work as a team. It's like one big family, and these people are loonies and they don't care, right? Well, if there is a nuclear war, if they plan to start a nuclear war, they will, they will escape the U.S., right? Like a month before, a week before the war starts, they will be living in beautiful islands in Fiji or somewhere, New Zealand, Australia. They'll have bunkers. They don't care about the average American, If like 50 million Americans die, but if they could win the war against Russia, they will do that, They're like, wow, we get the global domination, and for that we sacrifice 50 million Americans. We sacrifice New York City and San Francisco, but that's okay. We can just rebuild them afterwards. So it'll be like Nagasaki, Hiroshima, or they will say, well, if it's too like radioactive, we will just turn Miami into the next Silicon Valley, whatever. Like they'll make plans because their plan is global domination, and they don't care about human lives. They don't care about the destruction. Mad people running the world. It's like Dr. Strangelove, but we have like thousands of them now all over Washington, D.C., Berlin, London. It's all taken over by Dr. Strangeloves.
But see, that's where I'm conflicted about the World War III talk. To me, is almost just a continuation of just it's almost like news porn for me. And I know people may disagree. I think that there are threats, but I think that they're a little bit more embellished than they probably really are. And I only say that because for as much talk as there is about multipolarity, which I do believe that multipolarity is the way to go, I believe that the empires in a way work together. You just demonstrated with the oligarchs. You said if something were ever to hit the fan, then the oligarchs would leave the country and you would just have ordinary citizens killing each other, whether you're in this part of the world or that part of the world. So to me, that tells me that people are aware of, they already have a plan in case that happens, but I don't think it will ever happen because these economies, wouldn't that just be self-destruction in a way? Because these economies still trade with each other. For as much that's talked about the sanctions against Russia or anybody else, Russia still trades with countries that are our quote unquote enemies, the US in this case. So it's not like we don't have relationships with these countries, China owns a lot of the US's debt. So how can there be a world war when these countries are really interconnected anyway? Like even at the basic economic level, all these countries are connected. So why would you have a war against yourself in a sense?
Well, okay, I will take you back to 1961 or so. Okay, so JFK was the new president, and these guys, it is like the top, like the what do they call them? Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, right? At the highest level, they come to JFK and they go, "Hey guys, we have this like amazing plan. We drop 1,200. Oh, sorry. Okay, so we drop nuclear bombs and the hydrogen bombs on 1,200 cities in the Soviet Union and China." Okay, like I mean, like this was a real plan, right? But you can go to the NSA, the archive, and you can look that up. And they had maps. Okay, they had maps all drawn out, all the 1,200 cities. Okay, and it would have been like a disaster for the whole earth, right? So like they wanted to kill like 600 million people in Soviet Union and China, and the goal was global domination. And then JFK, he asked them, "Hey guys, what if they drop bombs on us?" Because by that time, Soviet Union had nuclear bombs. So their answer was, "Well, listen, they will kill a lot of Americans, but we will totally destroy them." Okay. So at the end, like 90% of the Russians will be dead, but only 50% of Americans will be dead. So we win at the end, right? So never underestimate the psychopathic nature of the people at the very top. You know, it's really mind-boggling. We just don't understand how demented some of these people at the top are, because for them it doesn't matter. For them it's about global domination, and they will rebuild. Like the rising of the phoenix from the ashes, right? So when people talk about the Great Reset, this is the kind of stuff they are talking about. Because there are only two major countries that are now a threat to the globalist rule, and that's Russia and China. And the Iran factor, that's in the Middle East. And if you take out Russia, the next one will be China. And then if you take out both Russia and China, then Iran becomes totally irrelevant. They will capitulate, right? So, yeah.
I guess so. So this leads to another philosophical question, and then we will segue into, I guess, a more U.S. centric, just with the political cycle around the corner. There's just so much that one can comment about that. I've always tried to think to myself. We mentioned Russia, China, the U.S. We mentioned that axis so much. Those three countries. Is this more so the friction? Is this a product of the East-West divide, quote unquote, which is based on historical occurrences? Or is this a combination of historical occurrences and this indoctrination, this whole idea of the Red Scare, basically like the new Red Scare, the new Cold War? Because a lot of people use that, those communists over there in the East part of the world versus us, we're the civilized West versus those communists in the East part of the world. What is it? Because there's something there. It's obviously a real thing, because it's like we go back to the same script again. It's always the U.S. versus China versus Russia, and there's always this. And And I think at one point Russia was kind of like in the middle, but I think it's clear that Russia is part of the East, regardless of their attempts to make Russia a Western part of the, I guess, world. That it's a real thing, the East West. I definitely acknowledge that. But why do you think that there's still so much friction, even in 2024? It's like we're talking as if it's 1964.
Yeah, seriously. What the hell, you know? I mean, well, I've been to Russia, I've been to China, I've been to America, I've been to Europe. All the people are wonderful. Okay. The average person is wonderful wherever you go. Okay. It is the psychopaths at the top who cannot be focusing on actual stuff. Okay. They don't want to think about how to make, the housing more affordable, healthcare more affordable, education more affordable, how to make the people smarter, how to make the people nicer, how to eliminate homelessness, how to eliminate drug addiction. It's all like boring topics for them. Okay. There's nothing in it for them. They're like, who cares, man? Okay, 100,000 Americans die every year with drug addiction. So freaking what? Okay? I mean, it means nothing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you're right. We should be getting along with one another. We should be focusing on peace and development. I mean, the world has so many poor people, right? We still have like if you go to Africa, 600 million people don't have access to electricity. Okay. Why don't you try to help them out? Okay. Stop spreading your LGBTQ human rights, freedom, democracy nonsense. Go give those 600 million Africans electricity. Okay, God will bless you. That's a true way to help humanity. Not like, oh, how wonderful that a 9-year-old boy can be put on the hormone blockers and turned into a girl. What kind of satanic and useless things are you focusing on? Like California has something like 170,000 homeless people. Do you have any plans to help them out? No. It's like 40,000 bridges in the US are structurally deficient. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
what is the plan to build them? No, but they will send without like blinking $200 billion to Ukraine and Israel. Okay, it'll be like boom, like bipartisan, Democrats, Republicans, the two cheeks of the same ass, and they will spend. It's like freaking idiots and traitors. These are not even really good politicians who care about Americans. I mean, look at Congress. It has like a 17-18% approval rate. So what the hell? You guys are not doing your job. You're just leaving Americans behind. And like you think, oh, China, Russia, they belong to the East. They're communists. Man, go to China, okay, or just go to YouTube and look at the videos of the subway stations, the highways, the airports, the train stations, the bullet trains, the hotels, the museums, the skyscrapers, the restaurants. They will blow your mind away. And all kinds of like new ways of transportation that you have never seen in the US and you will probably never have in the US. You know, like trains that float above the ground. Like you go
Mm-hmm.
to Shanghai, you fly into Shanghai, and you take the train from the airport to the city. You are taking a train that floats above the rail. It floats like, I don't know, 1 inch or so above the rail. So it's basically floating, and it can go up to 450 kilometers per hour with 1,000 people in the train. It's like magic. And then like they have metro systems where like the train is upside down. It's like a little, like a tram, but it's like upside down going around. I don't even know how to describe it, you know. And they are working on trains that go at 1,000 kilometers per hour, like in a tube. So you had to go and see, and they have 5G everywhere, and it's like so much faster than the US, and you won't find any homeless people, any drug addicts, like, so you have to go like a little bit farther from the city to maybe special places. But in general, like if you go spend a month in China and you travel everywhere, you won't find a single homeless person, and like the roads are clean and safe, and you can walk around at 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., so you can be just a woman, so you can be a beautiful woman in her 20s, right? And she's wearing a short skirt, and she can be walking around Beijing, Shanghai at 2, 3 in the morning without being scared, And so you can see like school children in subway stations, in subway trains. So China has like 10,000 kilometers of subway metro things, and the metro stations, a lot of them, they look like museums, like beautiful decoration, architecture with paintings on the wall. It's so safe and clean and so high tech, and you won't find a single beggar, single drug addict, single weirdo. Nobody's going to punch you, nobody's going to steal your stuff. It's like completely another world, and you have to go there to believe it. But these people are brainwashed, I see Americans on social media, they're so brainwashed with the anti-China, anti-Russia nonsense, They should be focusing on, hey, I want my politician to take care of my city, my state,
I reading your article, it was a really interesting article, and I suggested my audience go to the Sputnik India site. I know it can be also located on your Substack as well. As it's found in different locations. SL's work as a columnist, but I specifically found this article through Sputnik India's website, How the American Century Will Come to an End. The last part of that article was interesting. You make the argument that the final stage is hedonism and degeneracy, and you alluded to. I think we've discussed this before. I basically interpreted that as like the culture war cycle that we're in constantly. And my whole thing is this: I just think I don't believe in participating in the culture war at all. I think that we definitely need to get to the issue at hand, which is the economy is something that affects everybody. And I think that these cultural issues are definitely used as distractions. But you seem to suggest that these things are bigger than just distractions. This is basically just a symbolism of the end of the empire as we know it. I I think you and I may have that ideological disagreement because I'm not a patriotic person, quote unquote. I don't even know what that means. I think that people can have individual differences and still respect each other. I think the way the news cycles are now, every issue, and I think I understand where you're coming from. Every issue seems to be thrown into this just like this superficial category. Like instead of us talking about the geopolitical like landscape, the commodities markets, things that might be boring to people who are into pop culture stuff, we're focusing on a spokesperson for Bud Light drinking a beer if you're trans or if you're swimming with the women or the men. I mean, like we're focused on that kind of stuff as opposed to focusing on things that are more like universal for people that are affecting their livelihood like right now in the moment. And maybe that is a sign that the U.S. empire is kind of seeing its last days. I could see that side. I could see that argument for sure. I think it's more so what you said also in the article, which is the propagandization of the ordinary U.S. citizen. Just I talk to people, and there's really a hopelessness sense. I'm just communicating with people, with your friend groups. I put a post on Facebook yesterday and said I'm deactivating my Facebook until January the 15th, after the presidency, because I can't even have like decent conversations with people because you're automatically put in a box. Like if you don't agree with the system, if you don't participate in it, or if you agree with one side versus that side, then this side isn't mad at you about something. But I'm not in that. I'm like very independent of all that stuff, of all these different like opinions. And it's just a tax, it seems like, against the people, but there's no sort of efforts of like civility. Like we can't even have communication despite our differences. You and I can, but it seems like some of our friends who are more caught up in the system, they go all in on the red, blue, the Democrat, the Republican. It's like that side is truly evil to them, and that side is truly the good guys. Is there anything that you can offer to kind of what would be your advice to break through that communication barrier? Like, is there a communication barrier that can be overcome, or is it just a product of the two-party system where it can never be overcome? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah. So the first thing to realize is that nobody has the objective truth, right? So like, there's no one person that has like all the truth, and there's no one ideology that has all the truth. And so the key is not to fight over words. So if you say, is the government good or bad, or were taxes good or bad, or regulations good or bad, is debt good or bad? It's not just like like that. It's all about the scale. What kind of regulations, what
Mm-hmm.
kind of taxes, what is the rate, for whom, right? So and it's like like if you are in a marriage and if you have a bad mother-in-law, that doesn't mean that all mother-in-laws in the world are bad. That's just that is just your marriage. So if you have a so like if you say you have a bad government, it's not that so that's the characteristic of one government. It's not for all governments. And you have to know that it's like everything is divide and rule. So once you fall into the Democrats versus Republicans, democracy versus autocracy, communism versus capitalism, left
Yeah.
versus right, you are a victim. Okay, you are a victim of the brainwashing system, because there is like absolutely no reason for the world to be divided into left and right. I mean, it is what happens when you have a so-called democracy,
Mm-hmm.
because the rulers are the 0.1%, right? In the US, the 0.1% of Americans have more wealth than the bottom 90%. Okay. So the 0.1% own like 35% of the wealth. Okay. And the bottom 90% of the people, they own like 32% of the wealth. And the bottom 50% have no wealth. Okay. It's like basically like one or 2%, just a sliver. And probably if you add in the credit card debt, the auto debt, the mortgage, the car debt, their net asset will actually be probably negative.
Mm-hmm.
So, but how do the 0.1% they rule the world? I mean, they rule the U.S. It's by by slicing the country into left and right, and they fight each other and they cancel each other out. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the same happens at a global level. How does the US, with like 4.5% of the population, manage to control 95.5% of the world? It's by divide and rule, right? So there's a guy named George Friedman. He's the founder of this think tank called Stratfor, which is like the private CIA think tank. And this guy, George Friedman, you can find the video on YouTube. So he said in 2015, he said uh, the primordial uh, reason, or what is the word? The primordial. Okay, so he basically said the number one priority for the US is to uh, stop Germany and Russia from getting together. Okay? And he said if Germany and Russia they got together, they will become unstoppable and they will challenge the American empire. So that's what the Ukraine war is all about: is to drive a wedge through Russia, between Russia and Europe. Right? So so you have to understand the geopolitics, the divide and rule. So they want to split. Because if you look at the map, it's like so there is the Eurasia. There's
Mm-hmm.
actually one continent. Like Europe and Asia. So it's actually one big piece of block. And somehow we said, oh, here are the white people in Asia, and here are the Central Asians, and here are the Asians. It was all like based on skin color
Mm-hmm.
and the features. But if you look at the geography, I mean, it's just one big piece of land, a chunk. And there's no reason that land should be separated. That land should hate one another. Right? So from Japan to Portugal, it's like a perfect opportunity to work with one another. You know, just like the U.S. should be working very closely with Mexico, Central America, South America. They could do that, but those that area, it even has fewer problems. So at least you can say, oh, Central America, the north of South America, we have a drug problem, poverty, whatever. See, like, I mean, well, if the US were really smart, it would have actually shipped its manufacturing to Central America and South America. And it would have made that region, the Western Hemisphere, very prosperous. And that would have helped America, right? But very few people, like maybe JFK was the last one in the US who had this like a bigger vision of how, win-win, right? It's like about humanity's progress and prosperity. That kind of thinking doesn't stopped after JFK. Like now it's like bombing Gaza, bombing like every day. Israel kills like 50, 60 women and children. It's really psychotic, barbaric. And in Russia there was like absolutely no reason for Ukraine and Russia to have a fight. So, this is the empire's plan of divide and rule. But compare that to what China is doing, right? China brought Iran and Saudi Arabia together, which was like really mind blowing. And now, a few days ago, they brought all the 14 factions of Palestinians, including Fatah and Hamas.
Mm-hmm.
They brought them to Beijing. They made them agree to a grand unification of Palestinians. So the Hamas fully agreed to be a subordinate of the PLO. So this is really amazing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the Ukrainian foreign minister, he had to go to China, and then China made him to agree that Ukraine will meet with Russia and do a negotiation, a bilateral negotiation. So, the world is sick of the imperialist uh, shenanigans, right? And it's not even like, so most Americans don't even know what is happening, who
Mm-mm.
is controlling. They just fall for the propaganda. Oh, Putin is a dictator and America fights dictators. Man, give me a break. Okay. America supports 70% of the dictators in the world. And there are only two types of dictators. Okay. One type of dictator who fully cooperates with America, works with the IMF, and
Mm-hmm.
has military bases, buys Lockheed Martin fighter jets, and then he's a very good dictator. Okay, nobody
Mm-hmm.
talks about that kind of a dictator.
100%.
And then, Russia won. Russia is a civilization. It's been around for 1,000 plus years. It's not a rookie on the world stage. So Russia knows what's happening, and it wants to have its own civilization and its own vision of the world. And China has been around for 5,000 years. Okay. 2,000 years ago, China had a unified state, and they had bureaucrats with the taxing system. They had meritocracy, where you had to take like an exam to get promoted. China was the first in the world to do that,
Mm-hmm.
because you can go to Europe in like 16th, 17th, 18th century. The only way to get promoted was to be like related to the king, to be, it was all like nepotism, right? Very the class system. So like if you lived in the UK, they had all these the classes, right? So like if you were of the lower class, you could never become a lawyer, you could never become a businessman, you could, so China had meritocracy 2,000 years ago. You pass an exam, you get a job, and then you do well every year, you get promoted. It's like very, and they have a brilliant system. It's a little bit authoritarian, but it's a brilliant system, very efficient. So they just had this third plenary system. Like they meet every year. So they plan for 5 years, and then they meet every year to judge how their plan is going, and what new ideas they should implement. And the third one is always the most special because it focuses a lot on the economy. And in this year, they had 300 action items. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
300 action items on how to improve China's economy. What is the plan for Biden or Kamala Harris or Trump? They don't have any specific plans, right? It's all like vague talking. We will cut taxes. We will make America great. It's all like, and then there's no way to like do an evaluation. You cannot say, okay. So, for example, China says we are going to double the GDP per capita by 2035. Right? Like that is their real stated goal, and they make plans for 12 years in advance.
Mm-hmm.
What is the plan for America? Have you ever heard of an American president say, I'm going to improve wages by 40% over my next? No, they never talk specifics, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And if they cannot do the economy, they go into the culture war.
I was
because
just going to
they
say, but everything you said makes sense when it comes to, and I appreciate the explanation that you gave too. I loved your response about the whole bilateral relationships, the unilateral, the multipolarity. It makes sense, I think, to the average person in the audience just thinking these things out, because I believe this is the biggest blind spot to even have a political discussion with somebody. If you don't have a good grasp of geography, of the world, history, then it's going to be very hard to convince anybody, even if you're telling them, giving them straight facts, they're not going to know where to start with the factual information because they're so used to what the news is telling them. Even the stuff that you talked about with Hamas and Fatah, how much did the mainstream even report that? And to what degree did the mainstream report that? Because it's just like now, I have an iPhone right here. And a lot of times when you log into your iPhone, you get Apple News, you get all the mainstream news publications. So all you're getting, you're bombarded with propaganda. Just as soon as you open your phone up, a Facebook ad, straight propaganda. It's all, they may sell you a product, they may guide you towards a certain news story. And here, everything is about the U.S. Everything is about the U.S. and the election going on. Everything is about um, internal affairs, but you hardly see world news stories in the U.S. Like people on the streets, like when you talk to your friends, they don't talk about the world. They don't talk about it because they don't have any awareness of the world. They stick to what they know, which is the things that are talked about as far as the United States is concerned. And that's a serious problem. Even my most quote unquote educated friends, they're so limited when they talk about geopolitics, they can't even discuss it. They say things like Putin is a monster, this person's a monster. And I'm saying to myself, that's all you have to say about it. You have nothing else to comment but that. And it just tells you how limited the people are because they don't follow different types of international news sources. All they follow is the mainstream media. Um, it's a really sad time to be in journalism personally. I'm glad that Assange, if people didn't follow it, you probably know now that Julian Assange agreed to a plea deal. It's good to see Julian with his family again. I never thought that I would see that day happen, but I'm glad that it did happen. But the implications of that, even now, the Julian Assange persecution and what he went through just to report the truth. And people like yourself, a truth teller. I would call you a truth teller. Um, Again, it's not even about disagreeing about things. It's about if you're attempting to find the truth and educate people about the world. To me, that's a truth teller. It has nothing to do with being politically different from somebody. I think that's where people get the two confused. And we need to focus less on what we disagree on, and we need to focus more on let's report the world for what it is. And if you follow the mainstream media, you only get one portion of what the world actually is. You get in the U.S. NATO view of the world. You're not getting the actual full fledged view of the world. And I think that's important for my audience to understand. And like I think that's the biggest, I guess, block for people as in the educated classes, quote unquote, because these are the people I'm around. I'm around people who are the upper echelon of education, PhDs, myself included. But I'm not like the rest of those people. And that's why I have a serious problem having these discussions with my fellow friends that are in those circles because they're completely bought into the propaganda and there's no turning back from the propaganda. And I can tell people I think that there's a way to reverse the propaganda, but it's going to take a lot of suffering, I think, unfortunately, ideological suffering. And I don't know what that means. Maybe it takes people seeing through the political facade for what it is, but people seem to double down on this importance of politics. I know we talk about politics a lot, but you referred to the Truman Show before we came onto the air. You said, "Is this just the Truman Show?" And I just, for me, and I'm going to definitely let you talk, but I'm going to throw this out here. Within the last week and a half, Trump's assassination attempt, Biden, the most voted in president of all time in the US, 81 million votes, right? This guy that was so popular, 81 million votes, right, from 2020. And all of a sudden he drops out after one debate appearance? You expect me to believe that? And people actually believe that? Do you believe he dropped out because of that? This dude has shown signs of dementia for years. And they
So,
just
by the
now
way, when was the last time in the history of the US two people had a debate before the conventions? Never, right? So you go to the convention, you choose the people, and then the two candidates debate. So yeah, this whole thing is like totally freaking set up. It's like a freaking drama. It's like all scripted. That's why I said Truman Show. And
the
then
anti-democratic Democrats.
Kamala Harris, who could not win one primary, who couldn't
Mm-hmm.
get one delegate, and now suddenly she's the VP. I mean, the presidential candidate. What bogus.
The anti-democratic Democrats. Um, that's what I mean with people. If you look at it, they always like to use the voter suppression bullshit. And if you look at it, their candidates right now, it's going to be really bad this cycle because Kennedy, in some polls, is polling 12% nationally. Robert Kennedy Jr. And you got Jill Stein, she's polling at 2% in some places nationally. And so people are saying, why are all these people running outside of the two parties? Why are all these people ruining the show? Why did these people have to be so you mean to tell me you say that you're for democracy, which is just completely just a bullshit buzzword at this point? They've made that word not mean anything at all. There's no democracy here. How is it democratic when you're telling someone that there should only be, don't influence it, get these third party people out of here? So you're telling people they don't have a right to run for office, but yet you believe in democracy. And then your own party blackballs Robert Kennedy Jr., Marianne Williamson, Bernie already. He's been blackballed before. You don't even hear about Bernie anymore. And so they told them they couldn't even run, basically. They picked Biden, hand selected Biden. And like you said, without any contention at all before the convention, the Democratic National Convention, you're just going to say Kamala's the nominee now without any sort of. So that means that you're admitting that the Democratic Party doesn't give its voters any say so. But people are still stupid enough to be like, okay, so let's kill the orange monster. Let's defeat the monster now, the orange Donald Trump. How does that make any sense at all? To me, I don't know. But I just know that between the Trump assassination attempt, the Kamala situation, how does this happen within a week's time is my question. It sounds like it's something that's already planned.
Yeah, it's all planned. Because okay, so to be honest, everybody knew Biden was senile and was like borderline dementia, right? But 2 years ago, he was like shaking hands with non-existing people on stage. Yeah, he would do like weird stuff. He would fall all the time.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a grandpa who was shaking hands with the air, your grandpa has he's
Yeah.
it's but time to admit him into the senior homes and call the doctor for the Alzheimer's prescription. So we all knew that he was out. But so, I mean, logically, Biden would have stepped down before the primaries began, right? And then he would have said, okay, let Kamala be the next, or let Kamala and the rest of the crowd fight it out, right? Then we could have had like maybe Robert Kennedy Jr. He could have become the Democratic nominee. Something good like that could have happened. No, they just planned it all along. They said, we are going to choose Kamala, and we will get rid of Biden in around June, July timeframe. It was all planned out. And I don't know if they really planned on if the same people planned on killing Trump. I don't know, but that would be shocking. But definitely, the deep state, somebody way up there, they planned the assassination of Trump because such things just don't happen like that.
Okay, so I was going to get to that. I'm going to tell you the poll results. I did a poll because I've been out of the podcast for a few months. My mom has been sick. She's
Oh,
doing a lot better now, but she has cancer now, so I've been taking her back and forth to the hospital and stuff.
oh my
We've
God.
had some other things going on too, so that's the reason why I've taken a break from this for a while. But we're back. We're doing better now, so everything's going a lot better than we thought. So very positive vibes. So for all the people who were asking, who know me personally, my mom is in great hands. She's in great health right now.
Okay.
She's still got a battle, but she's doing good. But
Bless her. Bless her.
thank you. I did a question before I shut the pod down for a little bit, and I asked, do you personally believe that the deep state exists? 95% of my audience agreed that there is a deep state, whatever that is. And so after that question I posed 3 months ago, I posed another question 11 days ago, and I said, in a follow-up to a poll question done, the same one I just asked, remaining true to the context of the deep state, how likely is it that the Trump assassination attempt was staged? And I got all types of responses. So on YouTube, I got 33% very likely, 17% likely. So half and half, not likely 33%. So it was 50, 33, and then 17% said they were unsure. I did the same poll on Facebook. 83% of the people believed that it was staged to some degree. And then I had a person comment, Michael, one of
Okay,
my
hold on.
subscribers.
Staged by who? By Trump?
Yeah. Hold up. So Michael, a commentator and a subscriber on my YouTube channel, says, I think it depends what you mean by staged. Do I think an agency like the CIA was involved? Yes. Do I think that the shooter intentionally missed Trump? No. I think it was staged in the vein of the JFK assassination. It was at the time I published that, I was unsure of the details. And so I just kind of said staged just to cover, because you can take that from different standpoints. You could say that the CIA staged this, or you could say that it was staged from within the Trump campaign himself, which I don't understand why he would do that. I mean, that would make
Okay,
sense.
so staged means, okay, I mean, I need to understand. Like people say staged. So, was it mean that Trump was not shot at? Was his blood fake? I don't understand. What do they mean, stage?
I guess it depends on who you talk to. I'm simply
Yeah.
saying I posed the question because of the indiscrepancies of what happened. So if there were several eyewitness accounts and people who were interviewed that said that they saw the shooter climbing on top of the building before.
Yeah.
So
There
so
were like
how
so many people, pointing to the shooter, and they were like saying, "Hey, look at that guy! Look at the guy, and he has the gun." And all the police and the Secret Service, they did nothing. Come
that's what
on.
I mean, isn't it?
So
That's what. So that's the strangest thing ever. Um, so I guess
yeah.
that's why I posed the question. Me personally, I don't know why anyone else I guess put the question out, but to me that seemed like something that was already like, how do you allow that to happen? And that's kind of how I see the January 6th stuff. I didn't even bother going into the January 6th, which is hardly even talked about now. If you notice, they don't even talk about it. But I believe that was a staged event, the January 6th. How do you allow that many people to climb a Capitol building without any sort of sniper or anything like that? You mean it looked like a fucking movie script? I told my son when we were watching it, this does not look real at all. Like, this does not happen in real life. People climbing the side of a building and the
Yeah.
police letting them get inside of the building. Like it's
And they were
crazy.
like so peaceful, and they're like, welcome, welcome. It was like a tour guide, you know. And,
But that's what I
hello, do you
mean.
have a ticket? Do you have a ticket? The revolution ticket, wonderful. Let me tear half of that. I'll give the one back to you. My
Yeah,
God.
and unfortunately, some people died that day. You know, even during the Trump assassination attempt. I just, I question the timing of all this stuff. That's what I mean by stage. No, I definitely believe that. I believe there was a legitimate attempt towards him. I obviously don't know the details behind it, but it definitely doesn't seem like something was just. It didn't seem organic at all. Like it seemed like this was already in the works. Um, I'm not going to go as far as saying that the Democratic Party has something to do with it, because again, these people that are in control aren't even visible. Going back to the question about the deep state is not like you can point to one person and be like, okay, that person's the head of the deep state. It's an intricate network of people. And it's not
Yes, it's
just
like
in
a
the United States
swarm.
either.
So, like with Dr. Shiva, he talks about a swarm.
Hmm.
So it's a swarm, and they work together.
Okay, so this is one thing that I was curious about since we talked about the identity stuff so much and how it intertwines with politics. Do you think it's weird? Now, hear me out for a second. This is not some kind of conspiracy or whatever. I don't know what it is, but I just think it's weird that the presence of all the Indian American, all this influence, like Nikki Haley, all of a sudden, she was the Secretary of State under Trump. And then she becomes a candidate against Trump. Then you have Vivek, the snake, as Dr. Shiva calls him, Vivek Ramaswamy. He comes in and he's a Trump disciple. Kamala Harris, who before she got into public office deep, identified as an Indian American. She did not identify as a black person. She was an Indian. And we know that her mom is from India. And then you have JD Vance's wife is Indian American. So to me, it's like, are they handpicking these people because of their identities? Like, to me, Kamala seems like a clear, like, okay, she checks this box, she's black. She checks this box, she's Asian. She checks this box, she's tied to Biden, who was Obama's vice president, the first black president. To me, it seems like all these people are almost chosen because of their, I don't want to say it's only because of their identity, but it just seems almost too convenient at times too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but honestly, there are much smarter people in India. Okay, all these people are so slimy and stupid. Vivek is slimy. Nikki Haley is slimy and stupid. Uh, you know, and I don't know about Vance's wife, but she went to Yale Law School. So at least she's smart. But she's a wife. So, but yeah, and I think so. There are two reasons to choose such people. One, when you choose somebody like that from the immigrant background, they are very, very loyal and very, very grateful, right? Uh, because if you think about, like, say, Vivek's parents, or JD Vance's wife, or Nikki Haley, I'm sure they were all like lower middle class to barely middle class when they were young. You know,
Mm.
their homes didn't have nice cars, and they probably grew up with a lot of the inferiority complex. They probably felt racism. So for them, like, suddenly to be vaulted into the highest, the echelons of the society, the ruling class, they're like very happy, very loyal, and they will just go along. And also another one is that when you are like an immigrant, you have to work hard, you have to follow the rules, so you never will expose yourself to philosophies, ideas, facts outside the mainstream. You're
Mm-hmm.
not going to read some blogs or some non-mainstream. You're not going to listen to Kiko's Freethinkers forum. No, you're going to watch CNN, MSNBC, Fox, whatever, to understand your world. And like you need to blend with the crowd. So you need to work much harder to be a good, non-threatening,
Mm.
brown skinned person to get admitted. So these people are perfect victims to be molded by the ruling class, you know. And the second thing, especially for the Indians, I think that it's partly because they were hoping to use these Indians or these Indian Americans to influence India's politics and to turn India into a vassal country that would fight against China. You know, just like using Ukraine to fight against Russia, these people were hoping to use India to fight against China. And they're like, well, listen, so there are like 1.4 billion Indians. And all we have to do is to give, like, say, 100 Indians some really visible jobs, right? Like the World Bank's the head is now an Indian American. Okay, so you're telling me of all the smartest people in America, the only person to lead the World Bank is a guy who was actually born in India, and then he became an American citizen. So you're telling me there's nobody in the U.S. who could do that job? No, they
Mm.
chosen it. So similarly with, like, say, Google, Microsoft, etc. So many Indian CEOs. And I don't know why those guys could not be CEOs in India, and they had to go to the U.S. to become a CEO. So, right? I mean, if they were so smart, why didn't you come back and start your company? Because that's what the Chinese do, right? So the Chinese, they develop all of their own software, their own version of Google, their own version of Twitter, their own version of Zoom, their own version of whatever America has. They develop their own software. But in India, I still have to use Gmail, okay, because there's no Indian email. I have to use Gmail. It's like so embarrassing. Um, so they were hoping to, like, take over India by working with a few, like say 1,000 top Indians, give them really very good jobs and positions, and then they'll be able to influence India.
So,
That's my theory.
so I have to get your opinion, but we got about 10 minutes remaining, and I was curious about what are your views on Kamala Harris, and how effective do you think this strategy from the Democratic Party is going to be if she is the actual candidate? Because I'm not even convinced that she's going to be the candidate for the Democrats.
Oh,
I know a lot of people are slam dunking like she's the nominee. I'm not even convinced of that yet, because I think they're trying to see how the public is going to react to her. What's your view of her, and how do you think um, her background being a former prosecutor, which is pissing off a lot of people in some circuits, it's kind of contradictory, but it's also in line with Joe Biden too, because he authored the crime bill, and she's tied to the police state and the crime bill stuff too.
hmm.
What do you think her choice means for the Democrats?
Yeah, I don't know. I have never seen her say one really smart thing. You know, she talks in a weird way, like our
Mhm.
past, unburdened by the burdening of the past. Tomorrow is today. Today is today. Yesterday was today. What is she talking about? My
Mm-hmm.
God, it like hurts my brain. It's she's like a mad person. She's like this like like if she were like a blonde, like people would have totally laughed at her. She would be like this stereotypical bird-brained blonde who makes like silly comments. Like, what are you talking about? And then she
Mm-hmm.
goes, Russia is a country, Ukraine is a country. Ukraine is next to Russia. What is, I mean, she talks to like, she's talking to children.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I don't know, man. She doesn't know anything. What has she accomplished in the last 3 years as a vice president? I cannot think of one accomplishment. I think she's just a puppet of the deep state, and maybe they will make Pete Buttigieg, whatever his name is.
Buttigieg.
What kind of a name is that? My God! And he
I think
happens to be gay.
I think it's I think it's Czech descent, something like that. Czech Republic descent.
Oh, so can you imagine a black woman and a gay? It's like the perfect liberal, the embodiment. And then they don't need anything else. They don't need brains. They don't need experience. They don't need talents. They don't need to know, they don't need to be able to locate Ukraine on the map or Palestine on the map. It's like perfect. And then these two like totally inexperienced people would be the perfect puppet. Biden was a puppet, right? He was just surrounded by the cabal who made all the decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, including, probably he didn't even sign that letter that he tweeted on social media about his resignation. They probably like the cabal, the handlers probably signed it for him. He was probably in bed under a deep sleeping pill or something, right? I mean, so how do we know? How do we know he really? So yeah, it's really terrible for the U.S. You don't have any. I mean, because just imagine how complex it is to be an American president. You need to have so much wisdom. You need to have so much knowledge. You need to know, like you need to be able to name like 50 capitals of the world and names of 50 leaders. You need to understand complex history, geography, geopolitics. You need to be able to understand concepts like the American century is coming to an end. Nobody seems to know that, okay? So the US is like what the Soviet Union was in like, say, 1981. Okay. Nobody had a clue. Like if you went to Soviet Union and you said, hey guys, 10 years from now, the Soviet Union will be dissolved. No, like people would have laughed at you.
I have a comment. You just made it. It was interesting what you said then, and I don't know if this applies to the latest. The thing about Obama had the charisma. Like I succumbed to that. Like I admit that he had that going for him, but I guess just in general, even with George W. Bush, I'm talking about because the first election I was able to participate in was the 2000 election. I was 18 years old in 2000. To me, George W. Bush did not come across as an intellectual. He didn't come across as a very, very smart person. Um, his dad seemed a
He
lot
was so,
smarter.
yeah,
His
yeah.
dad seemed way more like in control than he did. But I'm just thinking about the last 25 years. If you assess our presidents, Trump included, Biden, Trump. I'm not saying that Trump isn't smart. He has a different type of smart, but to me, it's not like he would tell me about the world. We're talking strictly geopolitically. These people are geopolitically challenged. A lot of the leaders that we've had,
Yeah.
and if you compare that to some of the Richard Nixon interviews, Jimmy Carter, even not, these people had a way better grasp of the world than these people now. Like, if you compare, just go watch old footage from the presidents that we had from the 40s all the way up until even Reagan. I say I would include Reagan in that. You cut off that era, basically that 45 after the post-World War up into the 80s. Look at some tape from those presidents and how they talk about geopolitics versus the way the people talk about that now, and how people, I don't get the grasp that Kamala knows what she's talking about. I don't think that Trump knows what he's talking about a lot when we talk about, it's very general. Biden, we
Yeah.
know he doesn't know what he's talking about. Um, they don't have a grasp of the world. It's just simply, but is that all they have to do because the people here just are too dumb to understand the world in geopolitical terms? I think that's the only way that can work out. Like the populace would have to be educated for you to have a different standard. Obviously, the standard that they have in place now, the cabal that you use, the reference you use, the deep state, they also bring people in that don't have to have much intelligence because they know that everyone else is just going to listen to them anyway.
Yeah. Right. So it's like the movie. The Idiocracy. You know. So if you, yeah, it's like a circular. And they deliberately make people dumb. I've seen like street the interviews, and the guys would ask like basic questions. When did the U.S. get independence? Who did it get independence from?
Mm-hmm.
Who did we fight against in World War II? Who was Bin Laden? Okay, so it was so shocking because like young college students in the U.S. have no idea who Bin Laden was.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just like, man, how and then the media itself is so dumb. All these journalists who are doing the interviews, they're also very dumb people. They ask really dumb, superficial questions, and all you need is a couple of slogans. Okay, so you just need like 4 or 5 slogans. Russia, we support democracy. We will support Ukraine forever, as long as it takes. That's all you need to, like about 3 sentences, and you say that in like 17 CNN shows. Like the same guy goes out, he shows up at CNN, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, blah blah blah, and he has this, so he just has to memorize like 4 sentences, and he says that all over again. Then when he runs out of something to say, he would say, "Make America great." Or it's all like platitudes, stupid shallow slogans, and no understanding of the complexity. But this problem also goes to like think tanks
Mm-hmm.
and military generals, because if they had really done their homework, they wouldn't have started the war with Russia. And now it's going to be like either nuclear war, or it's going to be embarrassing for the US. Just like when the US left Afghanistan and the Taliban came to power,
Mm-hmm.
the same thing is going to happen in Ukraine, where Russia gets to keep Crimea and the 4 huge regions, like 20%
Kherson.
of Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be like, face losing situation for America. It's going to be like Biden will be deemed as the worst foreign policy guy in the history of America. And then what happens in Gaza? Like either like they have to kill like maybe 500,000 Palestinians in order to win, or they have to bring the people back to Gaza. So which one is it going to be? If you bring back if you bring back all the people, the Palestinians, back to Gaza, that will be a huge loss, the huge loss of prestige for both the US and Israel. And the only other way is like to do a genocide of 500,000 Palestinians. You bomb Yemen, you bomb Lebanon, you bomb Syria. You like you cause so much destruction that the world is going to hate you forever. So, yeah, like people are making very, very bad decisions.
It seems like that, as far as the presidential election in the U.S. is concerned, it seems like that you're open ended. It seems like you don't know what's going to happen. Do you have a prediction as far as like who you think is going to win and why?
I
And then I have one last thing to share before we go that has
okay.
something to do with the last time we talked.
Okay, I think Trump is going to win if he's not assassinated. Just from the crowd, whether you like him or not. I mean, it's just a fact. When he sets up rallies, oh my God, like 10,000, 20,000 people, they show up at one day's notice. No other politician comes close to doing that. So just based on that, he's going to win. And what was your second question?
Oh, and what? So you gave the answer who and why. You said Trump, and you gave the reasons why. I tend to lean that Trump will win too. And I honestly believe that the media is going to have a lot to do with it. Because the mainstream media is part of the deep state structure. The mugshot was a big news story, and then you kind of didn't hear much about the Trump stuff at all. It was all behind closed doors, the stuff with Fannie Willis, the Georgia stuff. And then you heard about the Stormy Daniels, all that shit. But Trump comes back into the mainstream news cycle at the perfect time, it seems, each time. And that only generates, money for these news corporations. I think that the media needs Trump to keep, because if they don't have him, there's nothing to talk about as far as their interest. And he definitely creates viewership, whether people like him or not. I think that's going to be an underrated factor, and I think it played into the 2016 election when Hillary tried to use that strategy. The bad press is going to take him down. People are going to think he's so negative, it's not going to help him win. And the opposite effect happened. It actually helped him gain a following, more of a cult following. Trump has a strong cult following that I don't think that people have factored in a lot. And I think that there's other candidates that are probably they're not taking votes away from anybody. It's simply a lot of people are just going to sit out again, I think. And that's probably going to hurt the Democrats. Not to mention the RFK factor is going to be, that's not factored in enough. Kennedy is going
What
to get
factor?
the Robert Kennedy Jr. factor
Oh yeah,
is going to
yeah.
he's going to
Yeah.
get a lot of votes. I think he's actually going to be available. He's going to be qualified for public funding the next cycle if he decides to run again. I think he's going to get that much support because you only have to get 5% to get public funding. Now, I don't know if that applies to an independent candidate, but I know for if you run with a party affiliation that you get 5% nationally, you qualify for funding the next presidential cycle. So I think that his inclusion in this field is significant in terms of funding possibilities down the road. But I want to conclude with the article. If you all go to AP, and yes, it is a mainstream source, but it's about President Javier Milei, and SL had a prediction for my last interview about what will be the state of Argentina in the near future. And there was an article just published from the AP, Almudena Calatrava and Isabel Debris. They co-authored this article under President Milei, the worst economic crisis in decades puts Argentine ingenuity to the test. And it talks about just all these how bad the inflation is. I think according to this article, it's pushing almost 300%. And it admits that these statistics may not even reflect how bad the situation is in Argentina. And asado, which is the beef industry in Argentina, is pretty much at a standstill right now, according to this AP News article. So a lot of what SL is saying has come to fruition, unfortunately, in Argentina. And I think that Milei just accepted the IMF package. And you said that there will be a relationship with the IMF and the global banks and stuff with Milei. But I thought he was a libertarian. I thought that he was independent from all these different influences. I thought that he didn't believe in all this government. But it seems like he's
Well, I have to do what I have to do in order to save Argentina. So I have to stab Argentina right in its heart in order to save it. I mean, we've seen this story so many times, So people who, people who know the truth about the IMF, the shock doctrine, like this is just a replay, this is like a Rambo movie number 45, only like if you fell for Milei's the clownish, circus, people believed in some utopian libertarian stuff. No, it's all standard practice. We've seen this show many, many times.
Yes, I actually clipped out that part where you make the prediction, and it's scary. I'm going to actually compare it after this interview is over, and this interview will publish over the weekend, and I'm sure the SL will share with his esteemed audience, and I'll do the same. But it says in this same article that he laid off over 70,000 public sector workers, cut pensions by 30%, and froze infrastructure projects. The IMF lowered its 2024 growth outlook for Argentina, projecting a almost 4% contraction, 3.5% to be exact. Poverty now afflicts a staggering 57% of Argentina's 47 million people, and annual inflation surpasses 270%, a level unseen in a generation. So, and this article even admits that these statistics are probably worse than what the reality is. So, going to what SL predicted, it seems like what you said is pretty much in line, unfortunately.
Yeah. It's like people should read John Perkins' book on the Confessions of an Economic Hitman. So this all just this playbook has been used countless number of times, and we saw that in Greece recently, and then in Russia before that, and in So like this is just standard stuff, It's like you deal with the mafia a few times, and you know their playbook.
Mr. S.L. Kanthan, episode 125 was amazing. I feel like each time we have an episode, it's new information that comes out of the information, which is great. That's the whole point. I can't wait to replay this myself and listen to it. Shouldn't be much editing involved. I enjoyed everything you had to say. As always, my friend, your insight is greatly appreciated. And you can find SL on Twitter. X is known as X now, Kanthan 2030. I'm going to link all of his information in the episode description. I don't know if Mr. Kanthan has any final words for my audience, but I just want to say thank you from Kiko's Freethinkers Forum to you. And we can't wait to talk to you down the road.
Yeah, I mean, I just have to say, follow Kiko's channel, guys. This is the best way to open your mind to new thoughts and concepts and ideas. Because if you're just watching CNN and reading the New York Times or whatever, you will never understand how the world works.
And SL's show, Geopolitics Demystified, please give him a check out on YouTube, to sub to ever-growing channel there. He's had some great guests on, and we have some overlap. I probably had a few of the guests that he's had on, but it's just a great way to open your mind to the world of geopolitics. Mr. Geopolitics himself, Mr. S.L. Kanthan. Make sure you check out his Sputnik India articles. I'm going to link those on the episode description as well. His Substack. SL is quite a prolific writer as of late, and I suggest my audience follow his information. And it's funny, just the social media mess. I won't get into it, but I love SL just his perspectives. But some of your audience on X, and I think it's the X format. It seems like every time you post something on X, there's always a possibility of you gaining 50 followers or losing 50. And that just shows you how the sort of landscape we're in today, where you simply can't even share opinions without people. Like, why get upset about something because somebody makes an opinion piece? I don't get it myself, but I know you've seen it, and it's quite unfortunate. But I guess it's part of the landscape that we're in when we're part of the independent media circuit, that we're going to be canceled just like everybody else.
Yes.
But beautiful people, enjoy the rest of your day. Tuesday, we have Dr. Irene Mavroukakis coming on. Dr. Irene was a supporter of Mike Termott, who has since dropped out of the race for the Libertarian Party for President of the United States. He's now the vice presidential nomination candidate with Chase Oliver. Chase Oliver is the Libertarian candidate. I've interviewed Chase before. I've interviewed Mike 3 times. And Mike is now the vice presidential candidate under Chase Oliver's his hopes of becoming the president of the United States in 2024 under the Libertarian Party ticket. Dr. Irene is going to join us to discuss her contributing chapter to A Gold New Deal, which is Mike Termott's edited volume. There are a lot of essays in there. Should be quite interesting. Larry Sharpe is in that book. Some of the leading libertarian thinking voices contributed to Mike's book. I'm going to link that in the episode description on Tuesday for Dr. Irene's episode. But beautiful people, enjoy the rest of your day, and I look forward to talk to you all soon. Cheers, everybody. SL, thank you so much. That was quite the episode. It was.